people are getting trapped in the minimum payment trap, even people that haven't really had issues with credit card debt in the past. They have higher balances than ever before. They're paying higher interest rates. The average credit card interest rate right now is almost 25%. And today I want to give you 12 important steps, an out of debt, step-by-step plan. And it's probably going to be a little different than what you've heard before. You probably have heard Dave Ramsey saying, do the snowball, and somebody else saying, do the avalanche. And then if you go online and you start searching around, you are going to get these offers, you're going to get these links, and before you know it, you're going to be on the phone call with somebody and they're going to be talking about maybe consolidation, perhaps debt settlement, perhaps consumer credit counseling, and you may be in danger of making a decision that you are going to regret later. Maybe something that's going to tank your credit, or it's not going to go the way that you hoped or planned. And if you follow this plan that I'm going to give you, you're going to avoid some of those mistakes and some of the missing pieces that I'm not hearing really talked about. Now, I haven't really covered debt in the past, not on YouTube anyway. And what I noticed is that people were getting bad information. They're getting biased information, even though the folks that I normally coach with aren't typically having a lot of credit card debt. But with those high interest rates and with the economy has turned a bit lately, I'm noticing more and more people are struggling with this. People who would like to be my clients. And until we could get the credit cards handled, then they can learn about investing, but they're not going to invest. They're not going to do some of the other strategies that I like to teach them about. So I realized I want to help people figure out how to get out of debt once and for all. So step number one is to decide you are going to get out of debt. This is going to involve getting really honest with yourself. You might need to admit some things like, I've really gotten myself into a trap. And that financial crutch sometimes, credit cards, they can be great for emergencies, for things, sometimes for investing in your business. But that thing that you thought was going to be the little crutch until things got better ended up becoming a trap. And I want to help you get out. One of the things you want to realize is your why. Why is it so important for you to get out of debt? And it's going to really help if you can decide what you want to do with that money instead. People get conditioned, like, I'm okay, I can handle these payments just fine. And 2 years, 3 years, 4 years later, oh my gosh, you're still making those payments. And if you are carrying, let's say, debt of $10,000 and you carry that for just 4 years at 25% interest, you are paying double whatever it is that you purchased. Add on some late fees or some additional penalties, and you could end up easily paying triple or even 4 times what you originally paid for that emergency or that trip or whatever it is that you got. And that's a bad deal. So decide that you are going to get out of debt. In my last video, I talked about how the word decide comes from the same root word as suicide or genocide. And it talks about the death of all other options. So when you make that decision, you are cutting off all other possibilities. And if you're willing to say, yep, I'm going to get out of debt no matter what, then you are going to succeed. And if you need a little extra motivation, I suggest you add up what the interest has already cost you, the interest and any additional fees that you have paid. And if you stay on that same track, where maybe you're making your minimum payments just fine, but you're not really getting ahead, add up, okay, a few more years of this, what is this going to cost me? And you will understand that that cost is way too high. Step number 2 is to do the emotional work. This is something that nobody ever really talks about, but frankly, it's where a lot of people get stuck. They've got shame around their debt, maybe some anger issues, maybe they were wronged or somebody owed them money, some things happened that maybe shouldn't have happened, or you made some mistakes that now you're like, what was I thinking? And until you deal with the emotional issues, it's really hard to take the steps forward. I've been creating something called the Debt Cure, and I've got my beta course takers in it with me. And one gal just said, oh my gosh, like, I was just so stuck. Actually, I've had multiple people say that understanding the emotional issues around debt was so huge for them. It just frees us up, enables us to take those steps forward. And so clearing shame and reframing the meaning of the debt. There might be some forgiveness work involved. There may be forgiveness work around yourself and learning to deal with ourselves, not as, oh my gosh, I'm bad, I made this mistake, how could I have been so dumb, I knew better. You know, we're programmed to be good boys and girls, and we're gonna pay all of our bills on time, and we should be paying off that credit card debt in full every month. And then when we're not able to do it, we can feel ashamed. And we want to treat ourselves with grace, with self-love, with compassion, because that is going to help us move forward. And we spent a lot of time in the recordings that we've done so far in the Debt Cure to deal with that emotional piece. Step number 3 is changing your habits and not taking on any new debt. When we make that decision, okay, I'm going to get out of debt, that's all well and fine to make the decision, but then we are going to have to change our habits so that we are no longer taking on that debt. And if it's been a crutch, if you've ever been in a cycle where, oh, as soon as I pay down that card or make this payment, oh, goody, now I've got available credit again. Now I get to take more debt out. If you are in that cycle, believe me, that is a warning sign that something needs to change. You are in a revolving debt trap. You're on that hamster wheel of debt. This is probably going to feel like a challenge. You're used to pulling out that credit card, and you're no longer going to be able to do that. And this may necessitate doing something so that it's not so easy. Back in the day, before everybody had their credit card numbers and their Apple Wallet and, you know, their PayPal accounts and online on Amazon, sometimes you would cut up your credit cards. And if people didn't want to cut up their credit cards, sometimes they would cancel credit cards as well. I actually don't recommend that necessarily, because it will usually drive your credit score down. So you don't want to close those accounts. But sometimes people would take their credit cards and put them in a metal coffee can of water and freeze it. And that way, if they were tempted to use their credit cards, there's no fast thawing of a frozen metal can. So you will want to take your credit card numbers out of all of the tempting places so that you don't have easy access to using your credit. This is going to mean probably changing some spending habits and not shopping when you feel like it, or purchasing things that are not necessities, maybe not eating out or not doing the kind of travel that you're used to doing. But when you make that decision, now you're going to be willing to change your habits. Number 4, you want to get debt clarity. And by this, I mean write everything down, or if you prefer, put it in a spreadsheet. But we don't want to be dealing with this fuzzy idea of, yeah, I've got a bunch of debt, but it seems manageable, I think, or all of a sudden it's not manageable. I'm not even sure how much there is. And that is a form of avoidance, as we don't want to get the clarity. So you want to get all of your credit cards out. And I would say any kind of consumer debt as well. There may be, you know, car loans or other kinds of consumer debt. Write it all out. How much do you owe? What are the balances? What are the interest rates? What are the due dates? What are the minimums due? Or how much are you paying if more than the minimum? You also want to write down like the phone number, the contact information, because you're going to want that in a future step. But you want to get all of the facts out there. How much do you owe? What are the interest rates? How much are you paying? Write it all down on paper, in a notebook, on a spreadsheet, but make sure that it lives in existence. It is not just in your head where it is easier to ignore, but it is something that you either have written out or that you can print out. Now we move on to step number 5. You want to get financial clarity. And what do I mean by that? You want to know where you are financially and what you want to accomplish with this debt thing. So we've already clarified the debt, but now you want clarity around what exactly is your income? What's your income after taxes? What are your expenses? And what are your priorities? What are the things that matter most to you? And this is going to be really important before you make a decision of how to deal with the debt. Knowing what your priorities are. In other words, is it most important to you to preserve or raise your credit score? Or is it more important to you where you're just like, oh, I really need some help. And if that means compromising my credit score so I can get a better deal on the debt, maybe be able to negotiate, I'm going to do that. Sometimes you can negotiate from strength. Sometimes you can negotiate from weakness. Either way works. As you learn all the different ways that you could get out of debt, there are going to be trade-offs. Maybe there's one way where you could negotiate balances or have somebody negotiate balances for you, but that is going to be really hard on your credit. Maybe there's another way, but you're going to have to pay a company like thousands of dollars in fees. And then you have to decide, could I do this for myself or do I really need somebody to help me with it? And so those are the kinds of decisions that you need to make of knowing what is important to you. You know, is it time or is it money? Is it preserving your credit or is it getting a better deal in order to pay off that debt? Number 6, you want to choose your debt reduction strategy. You want to gather information. You want to do your research. You might even be, depending on what you're looking at, you might want to get some financial advice. You might even want to get some legal advice. You're going to ask questions and understand the pros and the cons of the strategies that you are considering. Now, there's some popular strategies that I know you've heard about, the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche. And when you are in a position where making more than the minimum payments is like no problem, you just, want to figure out the best way to do it, those are great options. When people end up having trouble making progress, then usually they are going to learn about 2 or 3 different strategies, maybe debt consolidation, perhaps debt settlement. Debt settlement companies are all over the internet right now. And sometimes when you think that you are getting financial advice, you're looking at a blog, you're looking at a YouTube video, and you are researching the best ways to get out of debt. But guess what? You are getting biased information because that article that is sort of presenting itself as, consumer information, or that educational video that you're watching, those people that are sharing the strategies with you, they are affiliates and they are looking for the most profitable affiliate programs oftentimes. And so even if they're giving you multiple options, they are making money on all of those options. So you are not necessarily getting unbiased information. You may also be aware of consumer credit counseling services. Those are usually the options that people are aware of. And in the debt cure, we have gone over 12, 13, 14 different ways to get out of debt, ways that you won't see talked about on the internet because there's no affiliate link. Nobody's going to make money off of some of these strategies. And some of these strategies are really better, but all strategies are not for all people. Sometimes you have to have certain kinds of credit, certain kinds of assets. For instance, if you have a whole life policy, a whole life insurance policy, it gives you a really brilliant way to get out of credit card debt faster. But the majority of people either don't have that kind of life insurance or they may not have enough cash value, but that's one of the many strategies that I go through. And some of the strategies do involve using another asset for collateral in order to lower your interest rate and get that debt paid off faster. When you're choosing your debt reduction strategy, you want to get all the facts, you want to do the math, understand the math behind it. And what I mean by this, I was helping a client a few months ago and she wanted a strategy to get rid of her debt. And she looked at this one particular option and she talked to the company. It sounded really good to her. And I said, you should really do the math on this. And so she looked at what they were going to be charging her. Oh, these fees really seemed reasonable, until she added them up month after month, year after year for that period that she would be working with them. And it was something like $5,000. And her thought was, well, if I'm going to pay $5,000, I would rather put that money towards my debt. So you want to know the numbers, you want to do the math, but you also want to use your gut. Like, am I really going to do this? What feels like the best way? I always advise people to honor their intuition when making important decisions. And the one thing I would say is that if you have been trapped in a cycle of making minimum payments and you're telling yourself, it's okay because my credit score is good. It's okay because I haven't been late. It's okay because I'm staying on top of these minimum payments. No, that is not an option. If you are in the minimum payment trap, that is a big sign that it's time to make that decision. It's time to change some habits. It's time to look at your options and get out of debt for good, because those credit cards, they are sucking the lifeblood out of you and they are preventing you from building wealth. So if you're trapped in that cycle, trust me, it's time to get out, even if that means getting uncomfortable and dealing with something where you'd rather maybe just stay on that treadmill a little longer. But I'm telling you, as the years go by, you are not going to be happy with that decision when you end up paying perhaps 2 or 3 or 4 times your original debt, because that interest is going to add up. If you are paying additional fees or penalties, those add up really fast too. Once you've decided on how you are going to get out of debt, and by the way, you might choose more than one way. In other words, if you have 5 or 6 credit cards, there may be one way that makes sense for one card and another way that makes sense for a different card. Sometimes those small cards, you're like, I can just knock these out. And then maybe the larger cards, you're going to use a different strategy when you find yourself trapped on that treadmill. Number 7, you want to deploy that debt reduction strategy. Now that you've made the decision, it's time to take the action. You want to set aside time. You want to figure out what your starting point is. And one great starting point is probably going to be to talk to your creditors. And if you can negotiate away any of the fees that you've paid, the interest that you've paid, if you can negotiate down the interest rate, that is always going to be a win. And you might not know how to do that. That is something that I cover in the Debt Cure, because talking to creditors and knowing what the life cycle of a debt is and what happens next? What happens if I get behind? What happens if I'm totally on time with my payments? Can I negotiate from strength? You want to understand what your options are. And of course, they're going to be a little bit different with every creditor, but you want to understand your options and take action. So you want to set aside the time. You want to know what your next steps are. And if you're talking with creditors or maybe getting some kind of financial or legal advice, you are going to want to take really great notes on all of that. You're going to want to keep your priorities in mind of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You're going to be gathering more information along the way. And when you set aside that time and you take the actions, then do something nice for yourself, because this stuff is out of most people's comfort zones. Step number 8, you want to track your progress. Very important. You want to watch those numbers reduce. Yay! You are going to want to track monthly, and however it works for you to track, it might be pen and paper, it might be using software, it might be using spreadsheets, it might be a chart on the wall or a whiteboard where you are watching that debt go down, but you want to be tracking. It'll help keep you motivated. If you have any setbacks, then it'll help you get back on track, but you want to keep this project in motion. You also might be using the debt snowball or the debt avalanche, and there's going to be software and resources that you can access that will help you do that. Now, step 9 and step 10 are all about supercharging that debt payoff, making it go even faster. So step number 9 is going to be increasing your income. And this could be income, maybe you pick up a few extra hours at work, or it could be a side gig, or expanding. If you've got a business, are you able to add a service to what you're already doing, or maybe add a membership group? It also could be just selling some things that you're not using. That's going to bring in some more temporary income. If you can bring in more money and use that money to pay down the debt, it's going to just go that much faster. Step number 10 is going to be reducing your expenses. And this is a real opportunity to get creative. Or there's some things you can reduce temporarily. Can you audit your expenses? Sometimes people sign up for apps and they're charged once and then they realize they're getting charged monthly. You might have business expenses or a gym membership that you are not using, other kinds of memberships. Like, get honest with yourself. Am I using this? Am I getting value out of this? Is this thing that I'm spending money on, is it improving the quality of my life, or is this just a habit for paying for this? It was years ago that I gave up TV. I gave up my cable TV. This must have been, oh gosh, 15 years ago. It was not improving the quality of my life. If anything, it was a total time waster. I didn't miss it at all. Step number 11, be unstoppable. Keep going. When you start to pay off some of those cards, your minimum payments are going to go down, but don't reduce the amount that you are paying. Just keep on it. This is the snowball. Roll the payments that you were spending on some of those other debts, and it's going to pick up momentum and get really exciting. You want to remind yourself of your why. Why are you doing this? When this debt is paid off, what am I going to get to do with this money? And don't stop until all of your high interest credit card is gone. All right, and before the last one, I want to tell you a little more about the debt cure. It is almost done, and the response has been so amazing. I thought this was going to be a small, simple little program, but it has taken on a life of its own. I've got my wonderful beta testers, and they are giving me questions. I go into all of the strategies, how to talk to creditors, what is the life cycle of your debt, and why does that matter? As well, we do a lot of the emotional work. We do a shame clearing that just shifts the meaning of that debt. And I've watched people get unstuck. I've watched people already be able to negotiate hundreds and hundreds of dollars and lower their interest rate significantly, lower their payments. We are just, as I mentioned, about 7 weeks into it, and I'm already seeing some huge wins. So I wanted to get this out there. There just is so much that is missing in this area. If you are used to Dave Ramsey, who's a really smart guy, or Susie Orman, they have, for a lot of people, their vibe is kind of a shaming vibe. I don't know if you remember Susie's when she had her cable show. People would come on and they would beg and grovel, here's my situation. Can I buy this thing? And she would say, denied. And she would, no, what are you thinking? And Dave Ramsey, God love him. Sometimes he is using words like stupid and moron, and, it doesn't really vibe with everybody. So I realized that I was really bringing something new to the table, especially watching even some of my clients struggling with debt and people who have not historically had issues with it, but different challenges have come up and the interest rates are higher right now. So I am going to leave a link with all of the information if you want to look at that. It is for a super crazy, super low price right now. It is something where you're going to get all of the recordings. If you join now, I'm going to be doing a Q&A that you would be able to participate in. I might be doing some of those in the future as well. You're going to get all of the updates of the program as well. And what I absolutely know is that if you go through that program, go through the relevant parts for you. It's a long program, but I've got an outline. You'll be able to look at it and pick and choose the videos that you go through that are relevant for you. And if you apply this information and take action, there is no possible way that you won't end up earning that money back many times over. By the way, I haven't shared my story, but if you know my story, during the Great Recession, which was not so great for me, I ended up in almost $50,000 worth of debt, way in over my head. That was when the whole real estate crash was happening. I had multiple homes and their value was diving down, and I was a single mom launching a business and having trouble launching my business in the recession. And then I became my father's caregiver, and for more than 3 years, and he lived with me, and I ended up going through a foreclosure during that time. It was a crazy time, a time of a lot of learning as well. a very humbling time because I really thought that I had the money thing all figured out, and then life happened, and it was very humbling, but it was empowering to get debt paid off, to build up my credit again, to be able to buy a home again after going through a foreclosure, actually multiple foreclosures, because I also had a rental home that went into foreclosure. So it was not an easy time, but I not only survived it, I learned a lot in going through that. And I think when we look at our finances through the lens of personal growth, we find that it's not just about the numbers, that there's something truly to learn and benefit from as we grow and become stronger people and wiser people, and we can sometimes help others, which I realized was the whole purpose of me going through all of the things that I went through. It's so that I can help somebody else. And it's been my privilege to help some friends and some clients. And now, watching how many people are struggling, I knew it's time to go deeper and wider with this work. I saw a statistic that an estimated 2 million Americans are carrying credit card balances of $20,000 or more. And I see balances sometimes much higher than that. So if that is you, just know that you are not alone and there are solutions. You'll find a link in the comment that'll give you all the information. Right now, it's just a Google Doc. I don't even have like a funnel built out. It's not automated. This is like a work in progress, but I wanted to get it out to more people and also enable you. We actually have one more Q&A that's going to be happening. Step number 12 is to celebrate. You want to celebrate the habits that you changed. Celebrate all that you've overcome and the great accomplishment that you have done to be debt-free. It is truly impressive, and you want to celebrate. You want to celebrate the cash that you have freed up by putting it to good use. You want to take that discipline that you've learned and those good habits, and you want to deploy at least some of that money into investments, into moving forward with wealth building. Perhaps you're saving up for a down payment on a home, or you're building up your emergency fund larger. There's all kinds of things that you can be doing with that money that will make a huge long-term difference for you down the road. So don't miss that opportunity. That's why you're getting out of debt. It's not just to not have those interest payments anymore, but it's to be able to build wealth, to give back. You want to make decisions today that your future self will thank you for. So check out the Debt Cure. I'm also going to put the link in the comments for my short ebook. It's a 22-page guide, Breakthrough to Abundance, the 4 reasons you're stressing over money and how to break the cycle forever. That will also alert you to any free trainings that I'm doing, which I periodically do those on Zoom, any resources that I am sharing. And if you got something out of this video, please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment, because comments are my love language. I would love to know your takeaways. Bye-bye.